6 months in prison, $5,000 fine, and a 5-year probation. That's what's on the line for me. I'm on my way to court right now. My crime, you may ask? Well, camping out of bounds within the national park. This is my 3rd time going to court, and they're trying to bring the hammer down on me, it seems. Let's talk about this. Right here, the United States of America versus Eric Hanson. Buckle up, folks. The following tale is completely true and a bit of a journey. Let's just dive right in. What happens if you camp out of bounds in a national park? Violation 36 CFR 2-10B10, a Class B misdemeanor. The maximum possible fine for a Class B misdemeanor is $5,000, 6 months in prison, and 5 years of probation. Camping out of bounds is treated as the same level of crime as assaulting somebody. So if you're thinking of camping out of bounds, well, it can actually be a pretty big deal. Let's back up just a touch here. Back in February, I took a 5-day trip with Dan Becker and Emmett, his cameraman, and Jake Hanson, my camera guy, as we were going to document a trip and an episode for Epic Trails. Now, the goal was to hike from the South Rim to the North Rim, camp on the North Rim, and then come back across to the South Rim over 5 days in the winter. It proved to be a more difficult and more harrowing adventure than any of us expected. Dan Becker, as we were ascending on the North Rim, the final push with the last about mile and a half to go, his body was basically shutting down. Dan's back here with me. We're struggling, but we're gonna do this. We later learned that he was going through a condition called rhabdomyolysis, which is a super serious condition. We got as far as we could. We got out of the Grand Canyon. We camped at the North Kaibab trailhead. And at about 5 in the morning, I called 911.
Mike, Seth 911, where's your emergency?
That was the worst pain in my life. I've had an appendectomy before. That was nothing compared to this. Here you go.
I'm gonna get some aspirin ready.
We had a harrowing experience. Dan Becker needed to be rescued, and thankfully he is doing okay. But it was a lot going on in this trip. But that's not the end of the story, not by a long shot. When I got home about 2 to 3 weeks after the trip ended, a letter showed up in the mail. It was from the National Park Service, and it was a citation, a criminal proceeding that was about to follow. When Dan was finally rescued, I was completely drained. After Dan was removed from the scene,
Drugs are always fun.
Yeah, love you, dude.
You got me plugged in. Look at I got my IV hanging here.
That's right.
Thank you guys,
Yeah.
appreciate it. Send us a copy of the show.
the 3 of us kind of took some time to just sit and kind of assess our plan. Where we had posted up as an emergency, pitched our tents and spent the night was at the trailhead, not a campground. And it's about 1.5 miles from the actual North Rim, the place where there's like the views, the things that everybody goes for at the North Rim. We decided to go hike out there and go just have some chill time to kind of decompress a little bit. We're snowshoeing, it's deep snow, it takes a long time. So by the time we get out there, we're hanging out at the North Rim, and a ranger comes by and is like, hey, your guys' tents are still at the trailhead, and that is not cool. You guys got to move on and go to the backcountry campground, which is what we had a permit for. So we left the North Rim. We went back to the trailhead to go collect our belongings, hiked that 1.5 miles back. It was a long, slow time. We happened to be crossing paths with the ranger who actually did the extraction, who actually rescued Dan. And so we had a conversation with him, and he was like, hey, are you guys moving? Last night I was cool with you guys being here because it was an emergency, but tonight you guys have to move on. The ranger said, there is a general store, and you guys just got to get anywhere behind the general store, and you'll be good. You'll be fine. It's getting late. We pack up our stuff, and we hike down the road, and we've got to go about 1 mile, 1.5 miles again to get to where the ranger has directed us. You got to keep in mind that this is winter. There is a ton of snow on the ground. And as we're going down the road that goes to the campground, we pass a gas station with a store, a convenience store attached to it. The road stopped being plowed after the store, and so we figured, okay, this must be what the ranger was talking about. We set up camp and we sleep for a few hours because early in the morning we're gonna hike back across the canyon and resume our journey. We 100% believed that we were complying with what the ranger had said. I was completely surprised after getting home and finally being done with this trip and having everything that had happened to receive a notice in the mail that I had committed a crime. And as the leader of the party, I was responsible. At this point, this is now a criminal proceeding. The United States of America versus Eric Hanson. $5,000 fine, 6 months imprisonment, and 5 years probation. That is the sentence that is possible for camping out of bounds in a national park. Those are pretty stiff penalties for camping where you're not supposed to in a national park. Especially when I truly believed I had followed the directions of the rangers and had done nothing wrong. It turns out the convenience store at the gas station and the general store at the campground are not the same thing. What we thought had been the directions had become a little bit ambiguous. It was night. Everything on the North Rim is covered in 10 feet of snow. It turns out we were wrong by about 200 yards, and we camped out of bounds. When I received a Class B misdemeanor, I was surprised. I had to go to court. This actually took most of my summer to resolve this criminal proceeding. I was supposed to go to Rwanda a week later, and the judge was like, hey, you are now on probation and you can't leave the country without my permission. So I had to set a new court date. I had to go back the following week, about 2 days before I was supposed to go to Rwanda, and present my case that I wasn't a flight risk, that I wasn't going to leave the country and never come back to avoid this Class B misdemeanor. Thankfully, the judge agreed that I was not going to live the rest of my life in Rwanda and that I would come back and finish out this criminal proceeding. This was a court case. I was the defendant. There was a prosecutor who was trying to get basically the maximum punishment that they could get. It came down that I am a TV personality, a person of interest, and they wanted to show an example out of me. They discussed this openly in court, that they wanted to bring down kind of the hammer on me, and agree with it or disagree with it, that was what they did not want to show me leniency strictly because of who I am, the following that I have with television and here on YouTube. Kind of seems weird to use the court system non-unilaterally, to show different treatment because of who I am. But be that as it may, that is what the prosecutor was deciding to do, and the judge seemed to be totally fine with that. By the way, I had to get a lawyer, and the lawyer was beside himself with this whole court case. Could not believe that this was actually going through, that this was going to court, that the judge didn't dismiss this, that the prosecutors didn't drop this. Everybody who I told about this court case through the experience, especially people with law backgrounds, were just aghast that this was going through, that this was how our court system was deciding to use their resources. Seemed a little weird for camping out of bounds. Let's fast forward a little bit. They're trying to get me to take a plea agreement, which basically means that they want me to agree that I did something wrong and they're going to get something back, which is going to be the removal of content from YouTube, from television, and from all these things. I'm not willing to do that, which basically means that I have to keep going to court and keep negotiating with the prosecutor and try to get a better plea agreement. After my fourth time going to court and about 5 months of this drawn-out process in which I keep having to go to court and scheduling these things and meeting with lawyers and spending time and money and the taxpayers' money, they came back with a plea agreement of, we won't put you in jail, and that's about all that we can promise you. At this point in the trial, the prosecutor has come and revised their plea agreement a couple of times to basically make the deal better for me while still trying to get the most punishment that they can out of everything. After 4 times of going through this whole process, the prosecutor decided that they were going to remove imprisonment as a possibility as well as probation. But I could still face up to a $5,000 fine. At this point, my lawyer says, you know what? I think you need to take the deal. Now, we could go through and actually say, no, I don't accept that, and I'm going to take this all the way to court, and I'm going to go through a full court proceeding with a jury and see what they decide. But then again, that might be opening me up to a whole lot more that I don't really want to happen, as well as just a ton of time and effort and energy put into this. I decided, you know what, I'll take the plea agreement, I'll admit to wrongdoing. I did camp out of bounds, even though genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I thought that I was doing what the ranger had told us to do. So I have this plea agreement. I decide I'm going to take it and just whatever the punishment is, that's what it's going to be. Well, $1,000 fine. It could have been $5,000, and thankfully the judge showed, I guess, a little bit of leniency, but she slapped me with $1,000 fine. All for camping out of bounds by about 200 yards in the snow where we left no trace except for some footprints. We didn't even go to the bathroom out there. We hiked all the way to the outhouses to go use the restroom. We literally, no harm was done. There was a snowstorm right before and then a snowstorm a day after. But they found our footprints, they found our tent sites, and they decided to bring the hammer down on us. And by on us, I mean on me, because I was the person who had applied for the permit. I was the face of the TV show, and they wanted to make an example out of me. I had to get fingerprinted. I got a mugshot. I genuinely got a mugshot. I am now officially a criminal. I have a criminal record because I camped out of bounds. I had to present myself to the US Marshals and give them the paperwork that shows what my crime was for camping out of bounds. And they all gathered up, all the US Marshals that were in this in the building, gathered up, looked at it, looked at me, laughed. We're just like, what are we doing here? We really have to book you? We really have to put you, fingerprint you for camping out of bounds? The good news is that if I ever do have to spend some time in jail, well, I've got a rap sheet. I've got some street cred. I'm a Class B criminal, my friends. And yes, don't you mess with me, because you never know what I will do. I might camp out of bounds again. I'm a criminal now. I've got a rap sheet. I've got a criminal record. I've been fingerprinted. I've got a mugshot. Well, I guess I got to deal with that, live with that, learn from my mistakes, and tell you all about it so that if you're ever thinking of maybe consciously camping out of bounds, maybe you know what you're doing, well, now you know what the possible consequences could be. Let that be a lesson to you all, a tale of caution, and I have to swallow that pill. That is my tale, ladies and gentlemen, so, well, don't camp out of bounds. I'd love to hear from you. Did I deserve it? I did it. I did camp out of bounds, even though it was a misunderstanding, even though I thought I was doing what the ranger asked. And if you have some thoughts, I'd love to hear what you think. And if you are curious about watching the Grand Canyon incident, make sure you check out Dan Becker's video, because it's a doozy. And that's it for me, my friends. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later.